I want to talk about that. Okay, so we'll get started. I'm just going to do a quick intro just because I'm trying to give the show a little form and structure. So,
Sure.
welcome to Just Talking, Mike. I'm really excited to have you here. For anyone that's watching, you might be wondering, how does Amanda know a Oxford anthropologist, specifically Mike Pierson? Well, it may surprise you to know that I once had ambitions of being an anthropologist. They were derailed after I went to the University of Chicago to get my master's, where I met Mike.
It's a horrible place. No, I'm ambivalent.
Yeah, I am a bit ambivalent too. I'm glad it's over, but I'm also glad that I did it. It was a good experience for the most part.
Yeah, I mean the school mottos are like fun comes to die, or like where the only thing that goes down on you is your GPA. Like, they're really upbeat about the work you're doing there, and I love that about them.
Yeah, yeah. It was a bit of
I did
a.
my undergraduate there too, so I'm more damaged than you are.
Oh my
I
god, I
know.
forgot.
I chose to go back there. That's like full on Stockholm syndrome.
Wow. 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 And then, so you spent a couple years working in Chicago after we graduated, right?
Yeah, it's even worse than that. It's like I went there and hated it. I was like rebelling against being there. I was like, I'm gonna be a lawyer. And then I worked at like one of the best corporate law firms in Chicago where like Barack and Michelle met, and
Really?
did 2.5 years there, and I was like, I'm gonna go to Yale. And then like was like, actually I'm not doing this. This is horrible. And then applied to go to a PhD program elsewhere. I also applied to U of C only because it was free as an alumni. Did
Oh.
not get into any PhD programs. I mean, I only applied to 4. So, and there, I was an asshole about it. It was like, I'm gonna go to Harvard. Um, and then, and then U of C gave me like a semi-funded ride to do the masters, and I was like, all right,
I
it's
did
a
the
year.
exact same thing. I applied to PhD programs at Harvard, Stanford, Chicago, and UCLA, and then only got into maths, which is why I went there.
I mean, you still kind of are doing anthropology in a way, like digital
Yeah.
anthropology.
Oh, hell yeah. Literally, I always think about how what I'm doing could be future research for if I ever did go get my PhD. And I'm like, God damn, like, I wish I was taking notes right now. I mean, I do. I journal all the fucking time. And this is why I like interviewing people, you know? Like, I feel like I was trained to interview, and now I can finally utilize that.
You don't need a PhD to do anything though, especially in anthropology. Like unless you want to become a professor, which is funny because I'm actually not going to do that.
No
Um,
way.
no, I'm not going to like unless I don't know. We'll see. Like if the process of writing a dissertation radically alters me, but I think I'm done with
Hmm.
it.
Wow. So, what do you think you want to do?
Um, I mean, I would like to still do something. Like I've had a lot of career trajectory ideas. Law was out of the question. Um, I do like the like intermediary space, but I've tried consulting in a various number of capacities, like in the NGO world and like the private sector. It's pretty miserable,
Hmm.
and it's really hard to like switch gears between like writing about like Marxist feminist bullshit and then dealing with like capitalist bullshit. Like I need to eat for this wage.
Yeah.
Inevitably, like that's the case. Like we all have to live. But I think it would be nice to like join a think tank and like futz around for a while. It would be nice to like have some stature in if I survive like another 10 years to like start a new think tank on my own.
Oh my god, that
But
would be incredible.
but like you need like
Funding?
like people have to respect you
Yeah.
to start something like that. So I have to like get this PhD done and then like cut my teeth
Hmm.
in doing something that might be relevant. It's weird. We're weird though, anthropologists. Like we're kind of generalists. You can throw us anywhere. I mean, some of us like specialize. Like I specialize in East Africa. I think you were doing stuff on death, like
Yes.
ritual, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in undergrad, I specialized in West Africa, um, and death, and yeah, ancestor veneration and animal sacrifice. But then at Chicago, I kind of had to change everything since we couldn't do our research anywhere but Chicago. So
That
limiting.
program was just not designed to
Yeah.
be proper anthropology.
Yeah.
You have to
It
do at
really
least a
wasn't.
year field work to like get anything done.
Totally. Yeah. It was pretty limiting. It was dampening for me. But I have so many questions for you. Like, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, I think it would be interesting for me and for everyone to kind of have an understanding of what it means to be an anthropologist today in practice. Um,
Right.
and what comes along with that in terms of like how people perceive it and what you're up against.
Well, I don't think most people know what an anthropologist does, first off, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of people make the mistake of thinking it's archaeology, which like some anthropologists dabble in archaeology, but I don't know anything about bones. I study people, which is creepy, right? Like just ordinary people, like on the street or anywhere, like in any sort of social configuration. Um, and some people think it's about studying monkeys, and some of us do study like primates and like the biological arm of anthropology. And some schools of anthropology like force you to do cultural and biological, which like I'm so glad I've never had to do. Maybe I would have grown or something like as a person or intellectual. I don't know. I don't know what I would have to become. I had a pet monkey, so I feel like I really have, and we can
Jealous.
talk about that later.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
So what I think anthropologists do is sort of look under the hood of culture, like if it were a car, and see how it drives, and like see what kind of like infrastructure is in there. And like that infrastructure could be literally like sewers or the way buildings are made. Like because if we're talking about like, oh, I study culture, like that's a really vague term, and it really silos a lot of things. But culture is held up, and that's what I mean by infrastructure, held up in both terms, like supported, like scaffolding, and also like preventative or like preclusive or exclusionary in a lot of ways. So like what like makes a motor run, or like what makes it misfire or break down. And those like infrastructures could be like physical things like buildings or sewers, but they could also be like the state or like clusters of promises. I mean, most things are clusters of promises. Like I think that when this table that my computer is sitting on was built, like the promise was that it would hold shit, you know? Um, so a lot of like anthropology is getting into the field and participating and observing as a method, like with people who you don't necessarily know or are strange to you, or not. It's the process of making like either strange people familiar or familiar people strange by like seeing how they manipulate the stuff around them, whether they're people or tables, and seeing how those infrastructures work in their lives and what's holding up worlds for them and makes their worlds livable. And then we take those ideas and run them against other schools of thought, whether that's philosophy or political science or whatever, and we dialogue them. But there's a real emphasis on like what local people are doing, what everyday people are doing, and not just being like philosophers about it. Like we're not armchair people. We get into the field. That's why we travel to like far off places. Or sometimes you travel to, like I did my master's thesis in Chicago and just went to like a queer public salon, and one that I had been at for like a year and a half previous to doing my master's. So like I had to make that place weird for myself, like in order to understand what actually held it up as a space or like a kind of social project, and why it was succeeding and failing in certain ways. So I think that's what anthropologists do, but we're not really dialogued in like public life very much, even though we have a lot of, like, we're not survey people. We're not like making statistical regressions necessarily. Although some of us do quantitative anthropology and machine learning and stuff, which is cool. But
Yeah.
most of us don't. But I think some of these like intangibles are really useful and are left out of things. Like this, like during the Ebola crisis when like they couldn't contain the spread in certain places, it's like, well, no one studied burial practices except for anthropologists. And it took a while for the CDC to bring us in and like dialogue.
Wow. That's so interesting.
So that's my summary.
No, that was amazing. It really makes you think about how anthropology can be incorporated in so many ways, and I think that there's so much potential for this new generation that you are leading of anthropologists to really like redefine how anthropology is like somewhat restricted to academia still and being more openly utilized. I think it's really interesting talking about philosophy and the dialogue that exists within anthropology and academic anthropology. I remember at Chicago, the philosophical aspect just like totally shook me. I was not ready. I just didn't have the background.
They're much bigger on it though. Like at Oxford, they're more about like, oh, we went down to like Melanesia. Like I feel like there's a lot more like exotic travel writing kind of stuff happening here than there is like, what is the imminent critique? Like, what is the ontology of X, Y, like, like it's either this like wanker hand waving shit that's happening in the US where they're inventing new terms that have like 9 syllables versus like the British who invented it during the colonial time to try to like translate culture so they could be better colonized pretty much. But there's still like that flavor of like, oh, you've gone somewhere where like they're just different. And it's like most of the time when you travel places, like they're not actually so, I mean, people are always like, other cultures are different, sure. But like, they're not, it's not like it's not as exotic as people want to make it, or the fact that something is exotic doesn't necessarily make it valuable, actually, to like thought or improving anything for anybody.
Of course. Interesting. So I've heard a lot of things about Oxford. Obviously, it just seems like a really incredible, idyllic place. But I'm really interested to know your perspective, and I'm curious, like, how much of your like formal learning is one-on-one? Because I've heard that it's a lot of like one-on-one time with professors, like doing a ton of reading and then having these like really intimate classes, basically.
Yeah, I'm like the worst person to ask at Oxford because I've been sort of like a non-student here. I've been pretty much doing my work entirely independently since I came here.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
I've had 3 advisors to date. One of them I kicked off my project. 2 I currently have that I check in with and who are great like interlocutors for my project, but who I use them, like I dialogue with them if I so choose. Like they have to give update reports on me, but we don't really converse unless it's necessary. It's really just like you do it or you don't do it here. It's not like UFC, like when we did maps, where there was like a community and like a set curriculum. And I think like the master's and undergraduate is different. You can certainly sit in on any classes you want here, but like I think they call it a DPhil, not a PhD, a doctor of philosophy. But like you have to like, if you're interested in creating a community of thought, like you have to find those people. And it's a very decentralized school. So all of the departments, I think, are like independently funded and like do their own thing. There isn't like a course catalog that comes out saying what everyone's doing. Like you have to just like find your people and find your areas.
Interesting. Wow.
I felt pretty alienated here and also like pretty disinterested. And it's a shorter PhD program than in the States or in Canada. So I was just like, I'm gonna just focus on reading the kinds of things I want to read all the time and use my time to do what I want to do.
That's amazing.
And I wrote a paper that was pretty much like unique to me my first year to like pass my, they call it like a transfer of status, or like, you know, whatever qualification you need to like go off and do field work. But it really is just like customized to you. But if you also don't do anything the entire time, that's also something. Like you can just fully just not do anything. I think your level of involvement is up to you.
So what do you need to do to graduate with a DPhil?
So I did, okay, I actually have a really unusual story about my DPhil. So maybe that's kind of what I plan to talk about for this.
Tell me.
All right, so like you messaged me after I posted on Instagram about publishing my paper on hip hop in there, and we can talk about that. I did an ethnography of hip hop in Tanzania when I was an undergraduate, and published it a decade later. Yeah, and like the ideas I have in that paper have evolved, and like I was worried about publishing my first thing, which is why I like posted about it. But yeah. Then I did like some other work in Tanzania. I've done everything in Tanzania from like natural gas to agriculture to like women's issues, whatever. Like, but then in my master's, I was working on queer culture in Chicago, like queer performance, and I was melding those two when I got accepted here. So I was working on queer world building, community like activities and like whatever in Tanzania, but like at a time where the new president was sort of dictatorial and like there was extreme austerity, and it was like before I came back to Chicago, like things had really sort of degraded in Tanzania. So that was my project, and I got to Oxford and I got accepted to work with an Africanist who worked on queer studies. And so my project was going to be like, yeah, like how did queer people survive, and like what are their survival strategies, and how are these networks where it's criminalized, you can get 30 years in jail. Like, and also the president was like, not even just queer issues, like all women should give birth, and like, women, but also women should also be kicked out of school for being pregnant. And like, there were all these like weird, like sexual policing things happening. So I like brainstormed my project, theoretically wonderful and interesting, I think. Methodologically really tough. Like, how am I going to do this project on the ground in Tanzania and not get arrested? So I actually had to scrap my project entirely, and I had pretty much like an emotional meltdown about it. I like fled on a $60 flight to Portugal for 2 weeks and had to come up with a new project.
Wow.
And I just went hiking and like drank a lot of wine, but I kept thinking like, what's another way to approach like non-normative sexual practices, or like non-normative life in Tanzania? And I moved into disability studies, which is like pretty close, like a close kin relationship with a lot of queer studies, at least in the West. And so I started a project on sexuality and disability in Tanzania, and like went to Tanzania to do that for 18 months. Turns out I could not get a research permit while I was there because the government is controlling data and like knowledge and like social media and fucking everything. Am I allowed to curse on this thing?
Fuck yeah.
Great. And yeah, a few months in, I got deported.
No way.
Yeah, I was going home for my birthday. I was flying to meet actually a U Chicago professor who, through my recruiting job, I had made a CEO of Planned Parenthood in Missouri, and I was going to go hang out. Yeah, I have a weird storied life. I was going out there for my birthday, and I was in the airport, and I got targeted. And I thought it's possible that it was just for a bribe, but it's also possible that someone had like tipped them off or something. But basically, they accused me of of A, being a homosexual, and B, using a woman's bathroom, which never happened. And so I tried bribing them, which worked and didn't work because they returned the bribe, but they did let me leave the country.
Oh
So
my
I left the
God.
country, and then I spent 2 weeks in Missouri and Arkansas, whatever, and was hanging out in these like doing Planned Parenthood stuff. And then I came back. I tried coming back, and I got denied entry into the country. And they tried to arrest me, and then I got deported to Ethiopia, and I had to buy back my passport. And it took me a week. I was in airports for a week all around the world.
Oh
Um,
my
trying
God.
to like raise the money I needed to get back to the US. I could have gone back to the UK maybe, but I wasn't sure if my passport was still valid. Like I didn't know because they had just crossed out pages all over my passport.
What?
And so I spent 3 days drinking vodka out of McDonald's cups in the Dubai airport. And then my sister loaned me some money, and which I paid back. I then flew into Europe and had layovers there. It was like trying to get the quickest flights, but like the cheapest ones. So I was just laying over a lot. And then eventually,
Wow.
and all I had was a carry-on bag too, because I had only, all of my stuff was in an apartment in Tanzania. I left with a carry-on bag because I thought I was going on like a week vacation for my birthday. And
Oh my
and I was like,
gosh.
it's hot in Tanzania, so I just had like summer clothes with me. And I landed in Chicago in like the middle of the winter, homeless, broke, deported. My passport was fucked. Like I was like, and I had no PhD program, right? Like I had gotten accepted to Oxford to do this project on queer stuff in Tanzania, and I'm like denied entry into the country. So I thought it was all over.
Wait, so had you
Um,
started the program at this point?
I was I had finished about a year and a half of the program. I was in fieldwork, so I had
Oh my
already
God.
presented my project to the department and wrote a 50-page paper
Oh my gosh.
saying what I was going to do, and they had to accept it so that I would stay on in the program and be able to do fieldwork. Then I got funding to do fieldwork and set up the whole project, got an apartment in Tanzania, flew there, started working on the project, and then flew back, and then it was over.
Oh my
It was fully over.
gosh. How many years
So
ago
I've
was
had a
this?
real PhD journey.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was really, really shit for a few months there. I
Wow.
was kind of just living in sofas in Chicago for 3 months, trying to figure out how am I going to do this PhD? What's my project? And I eventually just switched my field site to Mombasa, Kenya, because actually most of the coast of Kenya was under the same protectorate as coastal Tanzania. They were they've changed a lot of hands in terms of colonial power or whatever, but it was mostly the Omani owned and then rented out to the British. And they have a really similar culture. So I was like, you know what? I'll do my disability project in Mombasa. I had never been there though, ever.
Mm-hmm.
But rewrote all my my whole project and the ethics approval, and kind of I can shotgun this in a year and a half there and still run into, because I finished my all the lead up there a little bit early, so it's the same timeline. I'll just go there. And yeah, and I started doing my project in Kenya, and then COVID also cut that short too. So it's been a little bit wild. I think I have
Wow.
enough. I have enough now to finish and write, but
Thank God.
it has been really non-traditional fieldwork experience.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. Oh my goodness. Wow. So this all started 2016, 2017?
I started in 2017. That's why when we spoke, it was it's been 5 years since we saw each other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've lived 3 lifetimes in the time that I've seen you last.
Oh my
It has been
gosh.
absolutely wild.
And now you're in this amazing place in Oxford with your boyfriend and your
I
amazing
am living
cat.
with my boyfriend. We have this gorgeous cat. Do you want to meet You want me Jigs?
Yes. Yes.
All right. He's sleeping, so
Jiggly's Twitch debut.
Jiggly, do you want to, he's just waking up.
Oh my goodness.
This is Jigglypuff.
Jigglypuff.
He
Hello.
might still be asleep. He's fully still asleep. But he's huge.
He's
He's 10 months.
beyond. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Cutest cat ever.
Yeah.
Wait, what kind is it?
He's a Persian.
Oh, he's a Persian. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So, okay. So we start out in 2017. Now we're in 2020. So you're settled in Oxford. And do you go to, I mean, obviously right now you're not going to campus, but would you be if things were normal?
I go to campus. There's just not a lot to do. Like I said,
Yeah.
like a lot of my research is my own thing.
Right.
If I want to like go visit an archive, I go visit an archive. If I want to go back to the field in Kenya, I fly there.
Wow.
Like if I need money to do it, I write a grant to do it. It's like being an entrepreneur, but
Yeah.
you don't get any money to do it or praise, and it's really hard.
Oh my god. We have my friend Michael's watching. Lo Celso's watching. Lo Celso asked if you've played Quidditch.
Well, I don't think we talk about J.K. Rowling anymore, right? Like she's canceled.
Yeah, J.K. is canceled. That is.
But no, also I don't
very
play
true.
games. I don't play games.
Yeah, that it's out of the question.
I'm not campy enough to do that, and also I don't really like Harry Potter.
I understand.
I think it's because I got when I was little for looking like him, and so I had this weird contrarian stance against Harry Potter for a long time.
I can see that. That makes sense. Wait, so I want to go back to your research in Mombasa. Can you tell us a little more about like what your dissertation might be about?
Yeah, so I'm still figuring that out, but because originally I was doing sexuality and disability, and it turns out like a highly Muslim culture is not necessarily just spilling open for you with their intimate details.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of my research, like my fieldwork is a lot of infighting. It's like disabled people fighting other disabled people, a lot of lawsuits, antagonism.
Wow.
So,
is there like a specific disability that you're like most familiar with or saw the most?
I mean, that's the other thing I'm having trouble with is what disability is, right? Like, So like there's been a big like movement in the UK and the US with disability studies where, you know, it's moved from like a medical model where like you're some biomedical, like you're deaf, you're blind, you're fistula, whatever, to the social model where it's like actually society isn't doing enough to like integrate people. And I think most of disability studies aligns with the social model. There isn't a lot of anthropology on disability, which is actually really surprising to me. I think to the extent that it's been done, it's been medical anthropology, which is surprising because anthropologists are constantly mad about like the medicalization of bodies and like how quickly that becomes capitalized. And then all the Marxists rise up and everyone gets upset, right? So no one's actually, but also no one's talking about it, right? And like anthropology is all about, like especially here at Oxford where we love the exotic, but also in like social theory where like in the U.S. or in the West in general, U.S. anthropology is like really concerned with difference. It's really surprising there's actually a huge elision with disability. And to the extent that it has been talked about, has been like the US and the UK. And there is actually a lot done on sexuality studies, which I thought was interesting coming from a queer studies background. But I don't think I necessarily need to start at the most like extreme thing in the global South. And I actually think that disability is an invention, like in terms that came out of the colonial era, but also probably in like the Fordist era. It's like it comes out of like the category of the laborer, like who doesn't have the capacity to labor, is essentially it. The question is like how does this like global category and like transhistorical category of labor relate or like hold up in a place like Kenya? So like some of my stuff is on labor relations or like the exclusion from labor and like lawsuits about that. But some of it is also like the way therapy is aligned for like young kids, like making them be like learn computer stuff or, you know, especially around autistic kids, like how do we make them viable workers? And a lot of it is it also comes into conversation with a lot of the stuff about you know, like dependency in the global south, but in Africa, I think a lot of stuff I read is like, you know, the American is narcissistic and like into the individual and like entrepreneurial selfhood, whatever, and like in Africa, like it's a web of dependencies and like it's a community and it's actually like with disability. When you're sharing vulnerabilities, it can fray those kinds of social relations because it's a big dependency to take on, and they don't have the resources or the prosthetics or like the infrastructures to like support it. And there's also a lot of the disability literature I've read coming out of Africa has focused on like witchcraft and stuff, which is totally at play. And people totally believe in like occult. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely stuff to talk about the occult. But I think my project is more about like what agreements are betrayed for disabled people, like what social agreements are betrayed that create disability in Mombasa in a very local way, but also how does it relate to like broader forms of debilitation that happen in labor, both in Kenya, but like as a, you know, an effect that's been happening from broader processes like colonialization. I mean, I don't know, like if this is good Twitch content, you know what
Oh
I
no,
mean?
this is amazing. It's so interesting. I just made a lot of connections as you were talking about that. Because I had a pretty severe learning disability growing up, and it surfaced when I was really young, like first grade. Like I could not learn to read, write, math. Like I just immediately was having problems with school. Um, and pretty quickly I had parents that were very on top of it and they had me seeing doctors and therapists and I was like pushed into the pipeline to like be made better right away and that's why I'm here right now. You know, it's always interesting to think like what would have happened if I hadn't been so fortunate to get the help that I was afforded. But making the connection to disability and labor, I think, is fascinating. It's not something that I've thought about before. Um, and, you know, I think on social media, you've probably noticed, like, everyone loves to talk about Marx now. And, like, there's so many Marxist memes, and it's just become so popularized, don't you think?
Well, I think, I mean, Marx is obviously, like as a U of C alum, like a big part of my, like instilled very heavily as an undergrad, as a MAPS alum.
Yeah.
I find it troubling to talk about some of, actually what I'm talking about with labor is like how do we rethink labor from disabilities perspective, because a lot of what Marx is talking about is like the exploitation of the laborer. Like what I'm seeing in Mombasa is a lot of people who want to labor, who aren't necessarily concerned about it being exploitative or, oh, like I have to enter a debilitated society that's been destroyed by colonialism or the West or whatever like evil we talk about in like capitals. They just want to be included, but they can't. So it's actually a huge category of people that are excluded or minoritized in Marxist literature who are usually cast as waste or surplus. And that literature is also not necessarily helpful either. Like I feel like a lot of what I read is either like these are waste like these are wasted populations or monsters, or you could take waste the other way, where it's like the avant-garde or like heroic side of things, and you see that in like films all the time. Look at like Bird Box, or like some of
Mm-hmm.
the Western films that come out that have like disabled themes, where someone has like a sensory cut off. I think it's like a common trope too when you deal with disabled stuff. So I'm trying to like do a service to like what people are actually doing in Mombasa. Um, I don't know how much I want to focus on like more of these witchcraft themes. Like I'm really tired of it. It's really interesting. Like one of the guys I met, who probably had polio, which we wouldn't medicalize it, like said that a witch in his community cast a spell on him, or no, they well, kind of. They had bewitched a tree trunk, and he was herding sheep, and he tripped over the tree trunk, and a ghost entered his legs. But he was
Mm-hmm.
very positive and sort of upbeat about it.
Hmm.
It wasn't like this like devastating like familial antagonism thing that you also read in some of the witchcraft anthropology.
Yeah.
But I just don't think that that is like necessarily the sweeping experience of disability in Kenya, or necessarily relevant to help like anyone. Like it's also like, what is this supposed to do? Like as a PhD student, you don't really expect your work to do anything,
Mm-hmm.
but you do hope that you could come up with some ideas that maybe would be beneficial for the community to hear later.
Oh,
And like,
totally.
I don't know if the tree trunk story is going to generate that, maybe, but it's
I
a fun
mean,
story.
yeah, I think it's hard to say, and like definitely depends on the broader context of your work. But even specifically for Twitch, disability is actually a huge topic. The Disabled Gamers Union is really active on Twitch and are constantly fighting for, um, you know, I'm trying to think of the right word, acceptance. You know, just being fully admitted into the community. Twitch actually like donated $1 million to the Disabled Gamers Foundation, and there are a lot of like really amazing streamers that have just like integrated new technology that allows them to be able to participate. And I don't know many of them personally, but it's
there's a big difference between accessibility and inclusion.
mm,
Um, so I think a lot of the disabled people I spoke with are really interested in access,
mm-hmm,
but inclusion, it depends where you're being included, and like even other disabled people don't necessarily want to be a part of other disabled people's groups.
mm,
At least in Mombasa. I mean, I
mm-hmm.
can't speak to the gaming community or other places. Just and I think that's always interesting, right? Like accessibility is sort of the, to me, a big factor of what disability is
Yeah.
like. So one of the first things that happened in the field that I was working in, I started with the physically disabled and people who had suffered from polio and couldn't really walk, and like they aligned their chairs differently next to tables so that they were easier to sit down on. And it's like making the difference between a perpendicular versus parallel chair is it's a kind of grammar. And I think of grammars as like a Starbucks order. Like people are like, if you said like I want a venti caramel macchiato, people would understand you. But if you said a macchiato caramel venti, it would be a mess, right? But grammars aren't necessarily just verbs. They're also material things, like the way a chair fits under a table is a grammar. Like
Right.
there are a set of rules that enable agreements to be made that have already presupposed a lot of context or built environments that you enter into, whether they're a video game or a dining room or a
Yeah.
conversation. And what disability is not necessarily like a physical state of like, oh, I have autism or oh, I'm deaf, but it's like it emerges in that context where you realize that the built environment is an agreement that's made that it already excludes you. So it's like trying to figure out, like when those things happen, like as an anthropologist trying to understand what disability is in a context I'm not familiar with, like where are these moments of disability arising between people and places and bodies, and like what are the infrastructures that are excluding them, and what are the grammars that hold them together? And like those are the things that I think if you're an anthropologist and you're studying culture, like it's those collection of grammars that you can say like hold up disability or whatever. And those to me are not only just about inclusion, but I think first and foremost they're about access or facilitation.
Totally. So interesting. Do you think you'll do like cross-cultural research to sort of compare and contrast what it's like in other places to Mombasa?
Well, I want to yell at white people in the West. I mean, I recognize that I'm one of them. But like, I want to yell at them as like a projection of other voices, because like the privilege of being at Oxford, or at least like my privilege at Oxford. A lot of people like don't question the fact that we have statues of like Cecil Rhodes, or like shrunken heads in our museums.
Oh my God.
You know, like again, like racist colonial anthropology was built here. Our discipline was built out of colonialism and racism, and like its roots are Oxford, you know. And it's like the school still doesn't accept Black students in a very high number or proportion. It's like a huge problem. So I'm not going to solve that, but and I'm not going to solve my own positionality in the matrix of studying like Southern disability. But if I could literally give any voice to like a completely absent, not give voice, it's like such a shitty, I'm like mad that I said that. Just like at least dialogue it, you know. Again, it like doesn't help though. I mean, what these people need more than anything is money. Like these people literally just need money. Like most disability came from like charity models and like from the colonial era, but up until the 90s, that like completely evaporated. And now we're all like social enterprise. You know, I don't know. Like there's this whole like new philanthropy model where it's like, how do we make money work for the poor?
Right.
It's like literally just give them money.
Yeah.
They just need money. Like, people need schools.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, or whatever they need. You know, food.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very frustrating.
It really is. It's tough because I feel like as an anthropologist, you're in a powerful but also somewhat powerless position because you're witnessing all these things, and you're kind of a fly on the wall, right? When you're out in the field.
Well, you're also a manipulative spy, and you also are ethically compromised all the time. Like your access to these communities. Okay, I speak Swahili proficiently. So like, I mean, I'm not like a newcomer, or like I can prove myself as like through starting gatekeepers. But at the end of the day, like I'm accepted into weird spaces that could rebound my project in Mombasa very quickly because they're like, oh, it's a white man, so he could probably either give us money or give us access to other white people who have money.
Right.
You know, like I could sing about my research all day, or like try to use idioms in Swahili to like smooth shit over. But I think like this is a chance, like I'm an opportunity structure.
Yeah.
And it also colors like all of your relationships, all of your interviews, how people like it colors the kind of data you collect, and like the way you write about those relationships and those people. You have to like keep that in mind too.
Totally. Do you like pay or reciprocate the people that you work with that are participating in your study?
I don't know. What I have done at like an institutional level is I do try to like find ways of being reciprocal to the extent I can. If it's like an institutional level, I mean, I have worked in the nonprofit sphere. I have raised like millions of dollars for like nonprofits in professional life. So I'm like, listen, what I can do is like I can walk you through how to do business development, or like how, like, because a lot of these institutions are really dated in the way they're thinking about it. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, all right, let me like chat with your parents who come to the school and do my research, and like I'll talk to your administration and your board, and we can chat about like how to work on something like that. Um, with parents, it's sometimes just like they're exhausted, like
Yeah.
what? How can I like? I can like come and like watch your kids, and like babysit something, which is technically not in my ethics approval, but oh well. It's like stuff like that. Like, what kind of intangibles can you offer? I'm also like, we're not paid to do this work. Like, I'm like
Right.
PhD for we're not, but like we're not doing that well.
Yeah.
They give us like a
Brutal.
stipend.
Yeah.
So
God.
I don't have like tons of cash to throw in different directions.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What drew you to East Africa in the beginning? Since that's where you've done all your research.
Well, I grew up in a really dark family. I'm a Jew, and like we just talked about the Holocaust constantly. And so when I was young, I was really attracted to genocide, famine, just like dark news stories. And like I'm talking like young, like middle school or so, I was like, oh my God, Africa is a mess. I am so interested. I just like ended up like reading a lot about Africa, like thinking
Wow.
it was a mess, and in high school to like learn a little bit more, and tried to learn French. Um, I mean, obviously, I have like a much more sophisticated position these days. But I did want to work in Africa, just because it had been sort of like a collective buildup over many, many years of knowledge and interest. That wasn't just actually about rooting out suffering, but like other things.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about like labor and things that are actually like happening also in like Detroit or in Chicago or in LA, or like there are it's not like the geography or the distribution of suffering is actually pretty well globalized now.
Mhm.
There's
Mhm.
people that are very very I know some really well off privileged people in Africa, and some very privileged disabled people, by the way, in
Interesting.
my field site,
Wow.
who are assholes at times. Certainly, I have one person thinking of as a massive womanizer,
Oh my
in a
gosh.
well-off as well. So, like,
Wow.
there's an interesting intersection of like power, in that case, like male power, um,
Mhm.
and class and whatnot. But yeah, so I was studying French in college. I got pretty far. I sucked at French, and I needed one more credit to finish, and I couldn't do it. I thought I would work in West Africa,
Mhm.
um, and I couldn't do it. So I switched and started Swahili from scratch. And then there
Wow.
were only 6 quarters offered at the university, and my major needed 7. So I went to Tanzania, like, and that's how I wrote the hip hop paper actually.
Wow. Full circle.
And then it's
Interesting.
been sort of like East Africa ever since.
Yeah. Did
Because
it
once you're out of, like, there's a weird intimacy that
Yeah.
happens.
Does it kind of like what does it feel like when you get there? Like how do you feel when you walk off the plane?
It's hot. It's very hot. You're very aware of your body and like how it
I
fits in your
remember
clothes.
that.
Everything is wet.
Yep. Oh my god.
um, I don't know. I mean, my impression when I was 20 versus, or like 1920 versus like now is really different. I mean,
Yeah.
when I had first gone there, the only other place I had been actually was China. Um,
Hmm.
but really different experience.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's really alienating most of
Mhm.
the time. I find that anthropology is really alienating. It's really hard to go somewhere, and be alone and like try to like connect in a culture where you're never going to be accepted no matter how smart or like much you study the culture or the language.
Yeah.
unless you have some tie. Like I find a lot of the people in my PhD program are actually from the countries they're studying. Like they're Israeli and study an Israeli thing, or they're German and they're studying a German thing. And I'm
Interesting.
like properly the white person trying to like go to Africa. Just getting rejected all the time. Like a lot of like learning the cultures is making a fucking fool of yourself. I got arrested the first time I went to Tanzania.
For what?
Because my project was on hip hop, and like it's ridiculous. Or like you look at me, like there's no way I'm gonna fit in. Yeah, I wrote a paper on swag. I don't have
Which
any
I need to
swag.
read. Please email it to
I'm
me.
like a diminutive Jewish gay man from New York, like trying to go to East Africa and learn about Tanzanian hip hop. Ridiculous.
I
I
think it's
did
awesome.
succeed in college. So I was like, that's an entryway. Not necessarily, you can't write about that in your like methodology section. But it's like you can do that a couple thousand times, get to know all the bouncers, get to know the bartenders, get to know some key people, like the regulars. Eventually you're a regular. Then you meet like people, like and yeah, so I eventually met a bunch of rappers and became friends with them, and then was just smoking weed with them. Unfortunately, my one of my other friends flirted with some guy on the beach, and they came and smoked weed with us, and then flirted with one of the people at our table. And the guy she was flirting with on the beach was an unmarked police officer and handcuffed just
Oh my.
me and the guy she flirted with because they only had 2 pairs of handcuffs. And they didn't have a police car or a badge or anything. So like we just
What the
walked and
hell?
walked. I broke one of my sandals.
Oh my god.
And we yeah, and we walked until we found a bajaji, like a little rickshaw.
Uh-huh.
And they brought us to this like rundown police station. Just the two of us. It was very romantic, and they were shaking him down. They took his gold jewelry and his phone and his money. They handcuffed him in the front, so I was texting the whole time.
Oh,
This
was
is
this
like
like,
very like,
were you like locked up abroad? Let's go. My episode starts now.
yeah. So I had texted my friends like, follow this way, like we're going down this road, um, and but I saw them shake down Cobello, my friend, and
Uh-huh.
I still had some money, so I stuffed my phone and as much money as I could grab out of my pocket up my like ass, like
Mhm.
just into the cheek, you
Mhm.
know.
Of course.
And I lost a 10,000 shilling bill, which one of the other guards collected and didn't tell anyone else. And I was like, oh, okay, so we just buy our way out. It's gonna be fine.
Oh my
Um,
god.
but yeah, they took my one sandal. They couldn't find any more money, and then my phone rang in my ass. Delightful. But fortunately, my friends were calling me and my and Cobello at the same time, so they got confused between the two phones.
Oh my
Yeah,
god.
I just called them and got out of. But that was my first time in East Africa when I was 20. I had to like bail myself out.
How many days had you been there when that happened?
It was only a day. Oh, by the time that happened, I was like 2 months in.
Oh, okay, okay. So you're a little
Yeah,
more
yeah, it's
comfortable.
fine. Way
Wow.
easier than getting deported.
Wow. That's freaking insane. You've been through it. Oh my god, okay. Obviously getting deported was the worst, right?
That was the worst. Yeah.
Yeah. Damn. Oh my god.
It's also
Well,
super hard. Like I felt less of a citizen in the U.S. actually because I needed to get a new passport, or I wanted to get a new passport. I didn't want to go to like Mombasa and restart my fieldwork with a passport that said like denied entry, blah blah blah.
yeah.
So I wanted to buy a new one. I mean, probably shouldn't go on air, but let's just say like my other passport disappeared. Um,
We'll never
and I
know
was
where it
like, oh,
went.
my new one. And like you need all of this paperwork and shit. And I can't even get a driver's license in Chicago because I don't have a permanent address. Like
What the
I ended up
hell?
getting a passport because my other one was lost on a train, and I bought it in an embassy in London.
Oh.
I used the bad passport to get back to London, and then I lost it on a train, and I don't know what happened.
Frame it one day. Should definitely frame it.
I
Um,
might be a spy. I don't know what's going on anymore.
Honestly, I'm sure the CIA would hire you. Like, you are a prime freaking candidate. They could use a freaking
No, because I would
anthropologist
never
in
work for the
there.
U.S. government.
Yeah, totally.
I
Speaking of
have.
London, what's it like? How are things over there?
Well, we're in our like fourth lockdown.
Great. Love to hear that.
What do you say? We have a
Um,
mutant strain of coronavirus.
well, okay, minus COVID. Do you like living there? Like, could you see yourself staying there? Or do you want to come back to the States?
Well, my partner is here and works for the NHS and is like
Cool.
in an upwardly mobile career there.
Awesome.
So I believe he also does a job that could be done anywhere, I think. Like
Uh huh.
he's in the radiology, so anywhere you need to see inside like a CT scan.
Uh huh.
But I still like he needs to continue his career for a few more years. So like I
Is he
think my plan
British?
is try to come to London. What?
Is he British?
He's British.
Amazing. So fun.
Yeah, so I'll probably get a job here. But I don't know if I'm gonna be here forever.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know where I'm
Brexit
going to
sounds
be in a
pretty.
couple months, you know?
You're in LA, right?
I'm in San Francisco, actually. I was
Oh,
in
shit, that's
LA.
way better.
Yeah, but I came
Or
up.
weird. Maybe tell me, like, do you like LA better or San Fran better than LA?
It's really hard. I'm from here, so I like LA more. I love the people in LA. Like I love just being around like creative, free people. San Francisco, the people are pretty fucking boring, honestly. Sorry if anyone watching's from here. But I'm like constantly in a debate of like which has a higher quality of living. I can't figure it out. I'm like, I don't know. So I honestly don't know what I'm gonna
Maybe
do.
that's a good problem to have, I guess.
Yeah,
I
they're
have
both
never been to
amazing.
San Francisco.
You gotta
I just
come
feel like there's
visit.
too many gay people there, and like I don't want to fight. Also, I feel like I'd be like a San Francisco or LA like too, and like I'm in the
Yeah.
UK. I have like decent teeth, so I'm doing fine.
They're crazy. They're
So
both crazy, but awesome. You should
I
definitely
went to
come
LA
visit.
once just for like a bender, and
It's good for that.
I don't know. One of my friends had like had a brief stint in jail because he like went crazy and like attacked his mother-in-law's car with an axe or something. But he had fully rebounded, got a a credit card, and like a $30,000 credit limit for his business, which was making origami rose boxes.
What?
And I'm like, girl,
That's the
you
most
can make it
LA thing
anywhere.
I've ever heard.
Right. Like, that's what I'm like, I can't do LA. Like, I just can't do it.
That's insane. That's literally insane.
It's
Um,
way better for me to have to go to Africa to make no money.
yeah. Oh, that sounds so much easier.
Or
I need.
write a long thing no one will ever read.
I'll read it. I want to read the paper that just got published. I will read all your stuff. I love it. I miss
That was actually
anthropology.
good. I'm a pretty self-deprecating person, but I think the paper on swag is good.
Oh my god. Okay, you got to send it to me after this. I'm really excited to
Yeah.
read it. I legit miss anthropology, and like this is just bringing me back. It made me think about when I got off the plane in Accra the first time, and like I walked off, and I was like, I'm fucking doing this. Like I'm by myself in Africa. Like this is crazy. And then I took like another plane and drove 4 hours to get to the village that I was gonna live in the Upper East region. And I've never been so hot in my fucking life. Like
So
I,
hot.
it was just like the water was just pouring out of every pore in my body for a week. And like I was drinking so much water, I was peeing like every 30 minutes. It was insane.
Yeah, I just think that people are like expecting you to say like, "Oh my God, it was like like a brilliant, like I don't know, I saw like it was so cultural and like sure, yeah. I mean, there's like brilliant things to see, like the people are really interesting. There's like beautiful like things to buy and experience and taste and whatever. But a lot of the experience is like it's really hot. Um, I'm really tired of getting yelled at and being seen. I just
Yeah.
want to, like, as a white person in East Africa, every 5 seconds, like Mzungu, 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 way
Is that
away. Like I'm just getting yelled at
does
and
that mean white
catcalled.
guy? What does it mean?
Mzungu means white person.
Uh-huh.
Way away is you. Hey you.
Do you even like do you look back? Or are you like, hello?
Well, it depends what mood I'm in. Some days I'm real snappy. I'm like, I'm from here now. I've been here for like a year. Like, who's in a chair there way away? Like, I don't know. Just
What
like,
does that
get
mean?
upset. It's like sometimes I'm just like, don't play with me or like, how's it going? But in like a really vernacular way, so they know that I'm not like. Because so in East Africa, like a la what is that Lindsay Lohan film? She's South African. Oh my God, Jumbo.
Mean Girls.
Mean Girls, yeah. Like they say Jumbo to everyone,
Right.
which you don't say to a tourist or like an infant. Um, like the correct like an easy way of saying hello is Mambo, which literally means problems.
Oh.
And you just respond in the affirmative, like, "Boy, it's good. Like the problems are fine."
Oh.
Um, or
Interesting.
like, "How about a yarn and how
Wow.
is your news?" But you'd never say "jumbo" to like a grown adult. It's like incredibly infantilizing when like you walk past after being there for like a year and a half and like eating shit and like making friends and like taking the buses or whatever, being a
Uh-huh.
full on like resident, and someone's like "jumbo," and you're like way away. Like, just
Are
respond with full and
are
like
people
blow their leave off.
surprised when they hear you speaking like perfect Swahili?
Well, they're either surprised or they don't accept it, like at
Mm.
all. Like they respond in English. It's like I just spoke a perfect Swahili sentence to you.
Yeah.
Like they don't accept it. I think it's really, really weird for white people to speak Swahili there. So
Yeah. I mean, how often do you even see white people, like on average?
there's usually an expat community of anywhere from 30 to 50 in any like large East African city that's pretty tight knit, which is also tough if you're entering into that scene
Mm-hmm.
because they're like all fucking brothers and have like held back each other's hair while they vomited. And they're also
Interesting.
not necessarily good people. It's like a lot of like women who came looking for love but became consultants, and like a
Yeah.
lot of like evil men who like work in the oil or arms business,
Mm.
or like
Interesting.
legacy families from the colonial era, and you like navigate the emotional and like personal and economic politics of all these groups that are all
Yeah.
pretty much fucking each other.
Wow.
No one's like there in a good way, or if it's like like an intern or someone who's on a study abroad program who like is bush-eyed and bushy tailed or whatever the term is.
Yeah. Green.
And like then you're like weirdly running an internship program you didn't expect to run. It's like one of those when you're like that.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So fascinating. I'm really excited for you. Like I just know you're going to do such amazing things. I still like I don't know why, probably just because it's like a fact, but I still just like remember you being such a like philosophical genius, and you're just so articulate and talented, and I'll never forget it. And I'm just so glad I got to talk to you and ask you all these questions. It's like
Very nice of you.
making my week. Oh my god, it's true. Like you really always just stood out to me, and like I haven't forgotten that. And you're also hilarious, which I really appreciate. Which brings me to my last question. We've already been talking for over an hour, and I don't want to take up your whole night. But wanted to see if you have any just like general hot takes. They can be like anthropologically inspired or not, just about like current cultural phenomena in the States. For example, astrology. Like I'm just curious, like your opinion on like how astrology has taken over and people are like using it as references for their lives, and or anything that you think is interesting right now, I'd love to hear about.
I don't know if I have anything to say about astrology other than I think it's super fun and maybe true, but I don't know.
What's your sign?
Um, I'm a Libra.
You're a Libra?
Can you believe
Interesting.
that?
I would not have
um,
guessed. You have like
I
more
think astrology is
personality
awesome.
than most Libras.
Yeah, I seem deeply unbalanced, but I
Do you
do
know
like
what
aesthetics
your
a lot.
rising sign is?
Aquarius, I think.
Okay, that makes sense. I get that. Damn.
Okay.
Love it.
There's like lots of air.
Yeah.
Just really windy.
Yeah.
Um, on that note, I hate weather. Like I hate the wind. I'm really against weather.
Oh yeah, I saw
Um,
you posted about that.
I hate the weather. It's like I understand we need weather, but I hate going outside and and thinking, oh, there's weather. Like that upsets me.
That's because you
Um,
lived in Chicago for so long.
yeah, but it's also real wet here and gray.
Oof.
And also when you said like what was your experience going to Africa, I'm like it was hot. Like I have a
Yeah.
problem with weather. Um,
Interesting. Hmm.
yeah. Um, Relevant things in the U.S. I think the most interesting thing for me, maybe to bring it back to intimacy and disability, is COVID. About
Mhm.
how COVID has made people, or like, like, there's been an uncomfortable unlearning of intimacy and consent, and I think that's a really interesting thing to think about.
In
Um,
terms of dating?
and another, no, just like, well, maybe, but I think consent in terms of like proximity to bodies and touch and space and personal space, and
Yeah.
some of that's dating, that's gender, some of that's infrastructure. I think
Mhm.
but there's like a lot of rules about consent, and also like having masks on is about consent too.
Yeah.
Um, that really is troubling for people, and has also refigured how people like relate to other people around them and bodies and things like that, which I think is an anthropological question in
Mhm.
this new time. And the other one I think, what was the other one? Oh no, can I think of it? It was also COVID related, wasn't it? They were both consent related. I don't know. Maybe that was it.
No,
If I think of it, I'll figure it out.
it's really interesting. Personal space is
Oh,
like,
in terms of disability,
yeah.
I think it's really interesting that we're all isolated now.
Yeah.
Um, as someone who's like very borderline introvert extrovert,
Mhm.
I think we're in a society like in the U.S. It's really valorized to be extroverted, social, gregarious, and I think COVID flips the table a little bit on that, where like makes us rethink, you know, what are personality disorders too that are considered to be introverted.
Yeah.
Um, I think some of that is changing too.
Totally. I've experienced a massive shift, just like monumental. I was at the point where before COVID, I like could not handle being alone. Like I needed to be with a friend or with a like romantic partner, like constantly distracted, constantly fucked up. To the point where now I prefer being by myself. I'm completely sober. I actually think about personal space in a whole nother way because I've become like a lot more spiritual and like can picture my aura all the time. Um, do you know
You
about
really on that
auras?
astrology thing. That was an important question for you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I love it all.
what's
But
your
like,
sign?
oh, I'm an Aries.
Oh, okay. I don't know how they go. Like, what is the relationship between air and fire, right?
Aries and Libra, we're like yin and yang. So we're opposites that attract, basically.
Interesting.
More on like a friendship level. Like I don't think Aries like typically date Libras, but they're usually like friends. Um, what
Well,
am
I'm
I
not a
focused
straight
with?
person trapped in a gay relationship, so that's not a problem here. But I do wonder. I mean, I guess like historically, I've had trouble with cancers and
That makes
Scorpio.
sense. Oh yeah. Well, they're just kind of generally problematic. I think a lot of people have issues with them. Um,
I mean, it's weird for me because they're water signs, and I love being wet. But I often feel like, oh, if I would describe the climate in East Africa, I would say I was constantly wet in the wrong way. Like it was never how I wanted
yes.
to be wet. It was like the rainy season, or I was sweating.
Fuck yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, water signs, man. Not really my thing. I'm a full
Yeah.
fire sign. I'm a Sag rising. So get a lot of
That.
fire in me. A lot of fire. Um, well, thank you so much, Mike. This has been like such a pleasure. Everyone who's watching, thank you for tuning in. And I hope we can catch up again soon. Keep me posted on everything.
Yeah, totally. And invite me back. And
You are always welcome.
I
Whenever
hope I
you,
maybe offered something like someone thought was useful or entertaining. So
1,000,000%, I'm speaking from my experience. It was really enlightening, and you are always welcome. And if you ever like just want to lecture or like have an opportunity to like interact with your fans or people who want to talk about your work, I can like set
my
this up.
goodness.
You will have fans if you don't already, or Jigglypuff, whoever needs the
Oh,
spotlight.
Daily is down to perform and bring the heat. Where is he?
Yeah, yeah. We could just do a
Should I
full
get him to
on.
sign off?
Yeah, please, please.
Oh, he's sitting in the dining chair just across from me.
Oh, oh my God, I can't get over it. It's the cutest cat I've ever seen. Is it the kind of cat that Taylor Swift has?
Don't talk about her. I don't like
Look, hold on. I'm gonna cut it so that it's just you and Jiggly on screen, and then I'll come back in a second. Oops, wait, that's not what I wanted. Hold on. This is what I wanted.
Really, this is our moment.
That was perfect.
Okay, well,
So cute. All right, well, enjoy the rest of the night. Thank you so much, and we will talk soon.
yeah, for sure. Who saw that? Anyone?
Yeah, we had a bunch of people watching. Here, wait, let me stop the stream, but we can still talk.